Well, hello, my friends. This is Macil Duncan, and welcome to the Monday morning, or should I say Monday afternoon show for the Macil Duncan radio show. We're broadcasting live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, here in my home studio here, thanks to Street Level USA. We appreciate all you guys that like and share the show and listen, and welcome our new partner, 96.9 FM Destiny Radio here in Chattanooga. We appreciate all the different folks that are listening. And if you like what you hear, like and share the show. Tell a friend. Well, we're also, don't forget, on Rumble and X and True Social, Facebook, locals.com, Instagram, and some others. Well, interesting stuff going on. I know a lot of you guys probably are enjoying the nice weather. It has become very beautiful here in the Absent area, but we've got a lot of rain. I tell you what, I think I may have to get me a canoe. My backyard has become little Lake Jude's again. I named it after my wife. But anyway, we had a great weekend at our church, and several of you have asked how to get this sermon. I talked about the battlefield for the children, the battle of the mind, and brought up a lot of truth facts about where Saul Alinsky and his influence, how he helped pretty much develop the curriculum now used at Columbia University. The interesting term that Saul Alinsky came up with is community organizer. And because that term is now a degree, the interesting thing is, and I brought up some facts, I'll bring up some more, how he influenced Hillary Clinton and Obama, and currently now influencing Donald Trump. That might catch your attention. We'll talk about it later in the show. But the person that right now is catching the eye of the country, I think pretty solidly, is a young lady that, and it's nice to know there were some good things happening on college campuses this year, and her name was Caitlin Clark, and she just had her NBA debut, and this is an American hero right here.
Jalen Amos is a big fan of Caitlin Clark carrying a big sign.
Because she knows how to hoop.
The fourth grader is among the thousands who filled UTA's College Park Center to see the 22-year-old make her WNBA debut.
This is going to be history. It's like what I told her, that's pretty epic that we get to watch her, because not a lot of games here in Dallas with somebody that big of a star.
The preseason game is more profound than the hardwood and basketball phenom. It's an arena of dreams. Clark's image, something mothers want to share with their daughters.
That's nice and refreshing to hear, don't you think? A women's sports being lifted up for a young lady that's excelled, done the right things, paid the price, and that's the good thing. And way to go, Caitlin Clark. And now I think that was her debut game this weekend, and she was lights out. The first game, I think, is either tonight or tomorrow night. But anyway, the Indiana Fever, I think we'll hear more about her. But I think it's refreshing. I'm a father of three daughters. All three of my girls played sports. I coached all three in basketball. And I tell you what, and my oldest played college ball. So if I'm just glad that my kids grew up in the era they did, because I really feel for you parents of today, all the things you have to deal with. But you just keep rooting your kids on, let them make goals, pray for them, and they just might see those goals matriculate and do some great things, I'm sure, in the days ahead. Well, we've got, speaking of goals and kids, the sad news we're finding out is a lot of folks right now are still panicking across the country in these college campuses. I did a little research. I don't know if you know this. I said, I wonder how many college campuses are in America. So I did a check. Of course, I Googled it, I guess you might call. There's 3,982 degree-granting post-secondary institutions. So they're not all called colleges. But anyway, there's 3,982, right at 4,000 degree-granting post-secondary institutions. That means after high school. This may be including trade schools, but I don't know. It wasn't super definitive. But the Washington Post talks about nearly 400 demonstrators widespread at their campus. The New York Times talks about 2,300 that have been arrested. The Wall Street Journal says some parents are very upset. They're calling for tuition refunds and rethinking future enrollments. They're not getting the education they expected and paid for. And so this is the interesting thing that's coalescing around the country. You're having these protests, supposedly, and you're having these outspoken people. But the interesting thing is parents are upset. Of course, the Jewish kids that are being prejudicially treated are upset. But it seems like most of the students on campus are not agreeing with these protests. So NBC News said, and New York officials, that they're finding out 60% of those arrested here in these arrests are not students of the campuses they're protesting on. 60%. Now, this is according to NBC News. Now, I reported to you right before the weekend, that Jill Stein was a part, the lady running for president of the Green Party, that she was a part of an arrest at the Washington University. And they arrested something like 118 people. And the magistrate or the arresting group there made a public statement that only 24 of those were actual students. So out of 118 arrested, that's a lot to be non-students. So what we're finding out, and I think you're going to find out too, and I'll play some clips, but Mayor Adams of New York said this. He said, "We saw this when BLM came to New York a few years ago with destructive intentions, and they were non-residents, and this needs to stop." Now, this is Mayor Adams. Now, he's a Democrat, okay? But up in New York, the things I'm hearing the mayor say, I got to tell you, I like what I'm hearing. He also defends the flag. But the New York Post shows George Soros is paying for these student radicals who are fueling nationwide explosions of Israel-hating protests. We're finding out through many of his NGOs, that's a non-government organization, they're channeling funds, and this is upsetting to many folks because you're finding out non-Americans are financing riots in America on American campuses. Is there something wrong with that picture? Have you noticed how all the tents look alike? All the signs are alike. All the chants are alike. It is very much uniformed, okay? So this didn't just organically happen like shabam. Let's all just have a pitch a fit. No, my friend, this was a planned, and it's right before a presidential election again. Every time we're about to have a major election in this country, George Soros and his Open Society and his America-hating pals get some group to pretend to be somebody, put on some masks, hold some signs up, and let's guess, and Mayor Adams even held up back with Antifa. He found one that says, "Hate America." He read off, this is the Democrat, mind you. He's saying it's the same people, the same message, and he goes, this needs to stop. So when you hear Democrats finally coming around and realizing this is not American kids, these are folks that are trying to influence our children. And I don't think folks are happy with that. The protest began in, do you remember which college it was? Which college is it that was the igniter, if you will, for all this to start? It was Columbia University. It all started there. And the copycat tent movement birthed from there. It went to Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, California, Ohio State, Michigan, Emory down in Georgia. And one by one, they started emulating what was going on in Columbia. Now, UCLA has pretty much been taken over by the Palestinian rioters. And Northwestern just capitulated and said they're going to start granting special Palestinian scholarships, and they've promised to hire so many Palestinian professors, regardless of merit. Okay, so you're telling kids if you pitch a fit loud enough and long enough, you get what you want. I wasn't raised that way. I don't know about you. But we're finding out some of these, I guess you would call organizations that are funded by these groups, the SJP, the USCPR, etc. But there's a name called fellows. What you do, the George Soros pays people like we would call a missionary. They call them fellows because they're to spark fellowship among the discontented. Okay, so just keep that in term. They try to take terminology, it appears to me, from the Christian church or movement. They rename the knowledge, but they use some of the strategies. So the fellows are supposed to go and create the fellowship among like-minded disgruntlement. Okay, now check this out. They're provided $7,800 for doing this. So when these kids go sleep in a tent, they're pooping in bags and peeing in Gatorade jars and eating all this takeout food. Understand this. This is these folks are there, but they're being paid. The main leaders are. They're fellowshipping the students, okay? And between 2,880 at the low end to 3,660, your campus-based fellows, those are starting out, you can earn up to $7,800. What you got to do? Grab a microphone and a whistle and create a lot of disruption. Campaigns are led by Palestinian organizations, and the radical group received at least $300,000 from the Soros Open Society and $355,000 from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. And the Rockefellers and the Soros are not the only one, but the cash from Soros and the acolytes have been critical to the Columbia protest. And I don't know if you're aware, but if you are one of these official protesters, you get meals delivered to you. Did you know that? So you sleep in these tents that they provide. They provide the tents, and they provide you a meal. They've got deals worked out with Dunkin' Donuts, local pizza deliveries. It's a sandwich shop called Pret. They have rotisserie chickens on the weekends. And they have all these other things. They bring in food for these kids. So they are fed, they provide shelter, and they provide them funding. These are the upper leadership. Now the kids are just the flunkies that go along just for the party. Don't know if they feed them as well, but they do feed the ones that are on the payroll. So that takes away the misnomer that all these kids are out there just scavenging. Now, the former Wall Street banker, Felice Gelman, she's a retired investment banker who has dedicated her Wall Street fortune to pro-Palestinian causes, and she funds these three groups as well. And Felice Gelman is a very wealthy person. She goes along with George Soros on many of these, and they have a lot of these little smaller companies that they do obscure contributions. And Soros giving billions to the Open Society Foundation. That's his group, and so it's interesting. But one of the people that Felice Gelman partners with is Huma Abedin. You may remember Huma Abedin is Hillary Clinton's former aide, her friend, and her former husband was Anthony Weiner. Well, Huma Abedin is now dating, and some say engaged to George Soros' son. Savvy? So this whole group, these left progressives, they have a gang, they have a group. So the Open Society has given more than $20 million to the Tides Foundation, a progressive nonprofit fiscal sponsor. And then this sends cash to smaller groups, and it helps funny and money launder, if you will, the money that pays the kids and pays for the supplies. So PBS News reported on the the mayor, Mayor Adams, and he calls these outside agitators. Now, some say, is this part of a plan? Are they trying to have some good guy Democrats across the country making these positive pro-American remarks? I don't know, but I will say this about Adams. He has spoken up against Biden on several occasions about the borders being too open, their city being overpopulated. So there's part of me that believes what he's saying. Now, I'm sure there's an angle. He's a politician. But he's saying it stronger than any other Democrat, and he sounds almost like a Republican. Can I read for you some quotes? Once I became aware of the outside agitators who were part of this operation, as Columbia mentioned in their letter and the request with the New York City Police Department, it was clear that we had to take appropriate actions when our intelligence divisions identified those who were professionally and well-trained trying to win our children over. He goes on to say several quotes, and he calls them professional agitators multiple times. And he goes on to make some very strong points about patriotism. He also goes on to say about our flag. He goes, "That's our flag, folks." Again, this is Mayor Adams of New York. "That's our flag, folks." Who would take over our buildings and put another flag up? Question mark. "It may be fine to other people, but not to me," Adams said. "It's despicable, and schools that are allowed to fly another country's flag. This should not happen in our country. We are surrendering our way of life, and this isn't right." So he would not give up the names of the agitators, but he said an investigation is moving forward. And those who aren't students, he sounds like he's going to seek for some kind of prosecution or penalty. Now, my point in all this is they had a lot to say about January 6ers, and these were American citizens. And they claimed had invaded the Capitol. Why are they allowing non-students to invade these campuses? Savvy? And get these kids, excited and ignited, and right here near the end of school. A lot of schools now have canceled their graduations. This is from Fox News. It says, anti-Israel unrest forces Columbia University to cancel large commencement as protests continue. And this is sad, so UCLA moves class online as Israel protests resume. The NYPD heightens security for Met Gala as anti-Israel groups call for a day of rage at nearby college. So they're calling for a day of rage. Now, don't forget the FBI director, Christopher Wray, has now warned us 6 times. I say this like a broken record to remind you. He sat in Congress and said, do not be surprised if we do not have some kind of an disruption on American soil. He said there are sleeper cells, his term. Because of the open border, we have sleeper cells in this country. Now, some of you may say, Macil, you're kind of scaring me. I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm just trying to tell you there was a church, and you may have heard this, that had a disruption this Sunday. A gunman walked up and tried to shoot the pastor.
Jesus. Take a look at that. Terrifying moments during Sunday service at a Pennsylvania church today. It was all caught on the live stream for Jesus Dwelling Place Church in North Braddock. The pastor says he's thankful to be alive after a man suddenly aimed a gun at him. He says 26-year-old Bernard Jr. Polite pulled the trigger, but the gun jammed. Church members sprung into action, disarming Polite and then holding him until police arrived. One of them says he didn't think twice.
I was running the camera, so all I could see was somebody walked up on the pulpit, and after they got up on the pulpit, they raised the gun up. Once they raised the gun up, I jumped up, from behind, got them from behind, struggled them down to the ground.
Terrifying. The pastor and church members say they have already forgiven the gunman and are just thanking God that no one was hurt.
Now, if you haven't heard, a deacon sprung into action, came up behind the gunman and clamped his arms down and knocked the gun out of his hand. But the trigger jammed. It shows him on video walking up, and he points the gun at the pastor, and evidently God may have intervened, and that pastor ducked and dived, which I would have done as well, and the deacon subdued him, and then the pastor came out and helped subdue him. They laid on him until police got there. Now, one, make sure your church locks their doors and has a security plan, okay, in these days and times. But two, this is very interesting. They found under the investigation that the gunman had a dead body in his house, and they're releasing more information. But this guy walked down the aisle of a church while it was in session with a gun. Something for us all to pray for. Pray for that church and understand this is not normal, and it's sad. But there's this movement in the country that kind of goes against who we are as a country. There was a group that tried to meet for worship in the Mall of America there in D.C., and they were kicked out. Check this out.
What this means, Christians, you're not welcome here. Every other religion, you're fine. And here's what's interesting about this form. It's actually for trespassing. For those of you that have just joined the party, you are standing with the bold and courageous worshipers of Minnesota. Minnesota, the winner is past.
I'm sorry, Mall of America, Minnesota. I said D.C. So evidently they were told to leave, and so they took it off the property, and they looked to have several thousands of people there, and they had a worship service. But this is what's happening. Christian persecution, and I think a lot of folks are a little, not maybe super shocked, but it's becoming more bold. Now, the Biden administration is targeting a Christian university and said they're trying to make an example of them. This is CBN News, the 700 Club. See what you think.
Education Secretary Miguel Cardona recently stunned critics with his vow to shut down Grand Canyon University, a popular Arizona-based Christian college.
We've levied the largest fine in ed history against a school that lied to students. We are cracking down on them, not only to shut them down, but to send a message across the country that you cannot.
They've levied the largest fine against a Christian school than anyone ever in the country. They're claiming that they lied. Okay, don't you think it'd be better to have a trial, let them bring evidence, and make sure there's some agreement before you levy a fine like that? Doesn't that sound, that when you put punishment before trial and conviction and before the opportunity to defend yourself, is that a little whacked in this country? That's what's happening. Just like that, the Secretary of State in Colorado said Donald Trump couldn't be on the ballot because she called him names like, he was trying to I can't remember the name anyway. But he was never accused, convicted of that, nor issued a warrant on that. He's not even on trial for that. But yet she used that term to get him off the ballot. See, that's what's happening with a lot of this Biden administration and their DOJ department. They're just making it up as they go. They're not following procedure, protocols, and to be able to give a Christian university this big of a fine. Now, check out the rest of the story.
Not prey on our students and expect to be successful.
Cardona's comments come just months after the Education Department hit the school with a historic $37.7 million fine.
$37.7 million fine. Now, granted, it is the largest Christian institution in America, and it's in Phoenix, Arizona. But why are they going after the Christians and the Christian education at this time? Does that not strike you funny? They're going after a Christian college while they're not doing anything about these folks that are very anti-Semitic, and these Palestinian groups going after on these secular colleges. It's almost like, hey, we're going to go after Christians and Jews. Now you're saying, Macil, can you prove any of these accusations? I'm not saying I can prove an accusation. How about we just do this? How about we just tell you what just recently happened in our Congress? They just passed a bill, H.R. I think it's 690, that says certain parts of the Bible, if you preach it, it's considered illegal. It's not gone to the Senate yet, but the Congress passed it. And that's, again, why you got to ask what's going on with Mike Johnson. Check this out.
Could it soon be a crime to preach the gospel? Are we edging close to a time where Christianity is banned and all believers are told that it's illegal to believe on, act on, or even speak about the Bible, the precious Word of God? I'd like to offer you a biblical perspective on a particularly pressing issue. The U.S. Congress just passed Bill H.R. 6090 issue. The U.S. Congress just passed Bill H.R. 6090. Bill H.R. 6090. Bill H.R. 6090. This bill was introduced to stop anti-Semitism in the U.S., but they included a clause which now makes it illegal to include that the Pharisees killed Jesus.
Now check this out. They try to say that it's illegal for you to say that the Pharisees killed Jesus. Now, John MacArthur and so many Christian pastors, conservative pastors, are really speaking out about this. But that's very concerning to many folks because they're concerned, why are they allowing this and why are they pursuing this? Now, here's another guy. This is a blogger on TikTok, if you will, and his is called the sitting perspective. Excuse me. Okay, anti-Christian bill just passed in the House, H.R. 6090.
This bill has a definition and like 11 different examples of what would qualify as anti-S. The ones Christians should be against and very concerned about is the fact that they say claims of Jews killing Jesus is anti-S. And many Christians are actually supporting this, saying that the Romans were the ones that killed Jesus, not the Jews. Well, in Acts 2, addressing Israel, the men of Israel, the Jews, it says, "You yourselves know this Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed." You Jews, this is the Jews, you crucified and killed. The Romans were just the tools the Jews used.
And that's true. So, if I got any pastors out there listening, or deacons, or Sunday school leaders, or people that lead in the church, you might want to familiarize yourself with H.R. 690. That's H.R. 690. And contact your congressman and your senator. Say, what were you thinking? Did it slip by you? Were you aware that this is contradictory to the scriptures? Because if somebody preaches, say next Easter, that the Jews crucified Christ, that goes against this bill and under the name of anti-Semitism. And I believe Speaker Johnson and some of them, intentionally or unintentionally, just put the church in a very situation that could cause great harm. So it's something to be concerned about, because I think a lot of people right now are sensing there's a lot of conflict in the country. Now, if you go to USA Today, which, it's not a conservative source, right? Columbia cancels main commencement. Emory relocates graduation ceremony. Universities announce major changes to their graduation plans on campus. Protest over Israel war in Gaza continues on Monday. And some universities are cracking down. Others are pretty much capitulating. You're getting a variety of impact. But again, as I told you, this was not a whoopsie. Oh, look what happened. This was an intentional plan, and I'll be able to share that more in the show. But this is something that the Federalists brought out, and I think it's worth noting. It said American universities are on a death spiral, and we should help them along. There are some people that said some of these schools are so far gone, maybe they need to be dissolved. That's a good thought. If it's going to be so anti-American, maybe Harvard, maybe Yale, maybe some of these schools should just relocate to another country. If you hate America this much, and you want to stand, and all the professors from Harvard went out and said they stand in solidarity with the Palestinian protesters. What's that tell you? Okay? And it's kind of like Donald Trump said yesterday, it's in the middle of one of his press conferences when he had a break from the crazy judge up there in New York. He said, Israel and basically the Jewish population, please take note of the actions of what's happening to your countrymen here in America and in Israel. Now, we'll talk about some of that too later in the show too, that there has been pretty much a high escalation. Israel said they're about to go in. And I was watching news all morning. And I believe it's called Rafah. They're right there ready to go in to get the hostages, pretty much wipe out Hamas. Hamas would not agree to the terms of peace, would not release the hostages, so they made some lame deal with Egypt. But it's not with Israel. Israel said, listen, you're dealing with us, not Egypt. Okay, we told you release the hostages, but there's like I guess that's their last leverage. And Hamas says they won't. And Hamas counteroffered and said, stop the war today and leave Palestine, and we'll stop. Now you got to ask yourself, okay, Palestine, you're not in a situation, Hamas, that you can match them bullet for bullet, bomb for bomb, or soldier for soldier. You're outnumbered. Okay, Iran kind of got shown a few days back when they started swapping missiles with Israel. 95% of Israel's missiles or more did not hit their targets. It's called the dome. But when Israel shot at the targets of Iran, 67 to 70% of theirs hit their targets. Big difference. I think that's Israel's way of saying, do you really want to continue down this road? So it all goes back to, hey, do you want to do this? Now, Israel has said, Netanyahu, we're willing to go this alone. If America and nobody else wants to help us, we're willing to go this alone. We will protect our country and protect our people. So it's going to be interesting. Now, you may have heard this, that America said, well, we're not going to send any more weapons. Now, we didn't say that to Ukraine. We kept sending them all kinds of money and supposed weapons and everything else. But now we're telling our ally that's trying to defend themselves. Now, this is getting very political right before the presidential election. I realize that, but this is the thing I think that has a lot of folks concerned. So as you think through that, then what's going on the campuses that's non-political? You may have heard this, but the University of Tennessee baptized 800 students this last week. Auburn had a breakout as well. Many of the colleges, Florida State, a lot of these schools are having spiritual moments in the last 7 months. And some of them are baptizing. Now, Tennessee, like I said, just baptized, I think it was 800. So the 700 Club, CBN, has an interview here with the ladies that it sparked in Auburn, of all places, to be honest with you. And it's moved, and of course, it just hit Tennessee.
So Madison Pruitt-Trout and Tanya Pruitt, it is such a joy to have both of you. CBN has so excitedly been covering the work that y'all have been doing on college campuses through these Unite events. And I'm just excited to sit down and talk to you about how they got started, what you've seen, and where you're going with this incredible movement that it truly feels like it's sweeping around college campuses. So I'll just start with the first question. How did the heart of these Unite events, how did the first one even become to be?
I'll talk on that.
Yeah, that's all you.
Yeah, so honestly, it started with me mentoring college students and hearing just the pain that they're going through and lots of addiction, lots of unimaginable things that they're dealing with anxiety and depression. And I'll tell the girls sometimes, like, you'll see their social media and you'll think, you're beautiful and everything looks perfect. And then you spend about 10 minutes with them and you find out everything's not perfect. And behind those pictures is a lot of pain, a lot of depression that we don't always see until we really get in deep talking to them. And so just through these conversations, I think I talked to about 6 girls. And after probably number 6, I stood up and said, no more. Like, I cannot stand back and watch college students suffer like this. And I started leading prayer on Auburn's campus. We started with 5 girls. In about 2 weeks, we had over 200 students gathered, praying for revival on our campus. And, you know, just feeling we needed God to move and heal students. And so during that time of prayer, God gave me a vision. And it was thousands of students gathered in Auburn's arena. And just kind of started moving towards that. I met with local pastors, campus ministry leaders, coaches, administration, and they locked arms and they said, let's go, let's do this. So September 12th, 2023, we had Unite Auburn. And I'm telling you, God moved in incredible ways. We could have never anticipated what was to come. 200
We had no idea.
200 spontaneous baptisms, students who were just set free from years of addiction that are now serving in their local church. It's just incredible.
So, my friend, did you hear that? It started with a lady with a passion, and then she started saying, I've got to do something about this. So she started praying with 5 students at Auburn University. And those 5 students mushroomed into hundreds and then thousands. Over 200 were baptized. But this Unite, you should go check it online. They're now going campus to campus across the country. And their desire is to try to unite students. And like I said, just happened at Florida State as well and at University of Tennessee. And when you see hundreds of kids coming and I guess pouring out their beer and their liquor and saying, listen, I'm living a debauched life. I want to give my heart to Christ, and I want to get things right. That's not normal, And do you see the battle we're facing? One, the media is not covering this. They're only covering all the disturbing riots. But let's just look at the war just on our college campuses, and that's what my sermon was about this Sunday, was talking about how the campuses, it's not so much the campuses, the land, it's the mind of the children. See, the devil wants their minds. He wants your mind. He wants mine. And what he does is he comes in and he finds a penetration area, something that you're weak about. And once he finds out what it is, he will try to exploit it. Now, with the help of social media and with internet and different things, don't forget the devil is the prince and power of the air. Ezekiel even says he's the most intelligent creature God ever made. So with that said, you need to understand, don't underestimate the devil. The devil talked 1/3 of the angels into leaving heaven and following him. Can you imagine? 1/3 of the angels in heaven said, hey, this guy's pretty persuasive. Even though God Almighty and Jesus are up there, God the Father and God the Son, I think Lucifer's got a point. Must have been a bunch of Baptists, because Baptists do that. They fight all the time. But there's a book called Rules for Radicals. And I shared this with my church this Sunday, and some of them were very shocked to hear this. But Saul Alinsky, who wrote the book Rules for Radicals, he dedicated the book to Satan for having the first successful, let's see how he put it, the very first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did so effectively was Lucifer, when he took 1/3 of the angels away from God. See, they spin it to sound like a positive. So if you go by the book Rules for Radicals, it's the training manual for community organizers. And as you look at this and understand, this Rules for Radicals was dedicated to Satan. So anytime a book starts off with a dedication to Lucifer and giving him honor for disobeying and rebelling against God, that ought to tell you a little something about the author himself. Now, here's some quotes from Saul Alinsky, just so you can understand who he's coming from and maybe why you're seeing this so much in political progressives, okay? In the beginning, the organizer's first job is to create the issues or problems, okay? He says, in the beginning, the organizer's first job is to create issues or problems. So when you send someone in, say, to Columbia University, and the first thing of the community organizer is to create issues or problems, divide the people. That's the community organizer. Check this out. Here's another quote. Never let a crisis go to waste. Never let a crisis go to waste. It goes on to say, organizers' first job is to create the issues or the problems, and the organization must be based on many issues so they can bring much conflict and unite those that are opposed to the status quo. True revolutionaries do not flaunt their radicalism. Now, check this. They cut their hair, put on suits and dresses, and infiltrate the system from within. Did you catch that? True revolutionaries do not flaunt their radicalism. They don't flaunt it. Okay? They smile and try to blend in. It says they cut their hair, put on suits and dresses, and infiltrate the system from within. It also says this. This is Saul Alinsky. Control health care and you control the people. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and then polarize it. Again, Rules for Radical. Saul Alinsky dedicated the book to the devil. He is the one that did a lot of mentoring. And I can read you some more of these, but in 1969, there was a young girl who was the valedictorian, and as she gave her address to the class, the thing she fails to mention in 1965, the year I was born, she had surrendered to her church that she was praying about being a missionary. And she went off to college to consider that field of mission work. But Hillary Rodham, you know Hillary Rodham Clinton, though, ended up being talked out of missions by Saul Alinsky. He personally mentored her. And Hillary Clinton wrote a 92-page senior thesis at Wesley College on the views and advocacy on Saul Alinsky, and she titled her paper about Mr. Alinsky. It's called this: There is Only the Fight, ... He took a young lady, Hillary Rodham, that wanted to be a missionary. He radicalized her. So if they can get Hillary Clinton out of a mission work and to become radicalized, I don't think any of us would confuse Hillary Clinton today as a missionary for Jesus Christ. They want your children. You may have a child right now at a college that went there saying, I love God, I love my mom and dad, I love this country. But in a short amount of time, you see them coming home on the breaks. They're questioning authority, they're questioning the Bible, they're questioning everything. And then you see them go from questioning to hating and having animosity about this country. That's not by accident, my friend, that's by design. And why is that? Why is that? Well, like I said, in 1969, Hillary Clinton did this, but in 1980, a few years later, there was a young guy named Barry that was being mentored by the Saul Alinsky team, if you will. And he was actually paid. Barry was paid to be a community organizer through the Gamaliel Foundation. And he was recruited and trained, and he was paid as a community organizer on the south side of Chicago. And in 1998, even wrote a chapter for a book called After Alinsky, Community Organizing in Illinois. You may say, well, who's this Barry guy? Well, his name, Barry Soetoro. He was born in Kenya. He was raised by his stepfather, Mr. Soetoro, in Hawaii. He later became a U.S. citizen and then became a congressman for the area of Chicago, but he converted to Muslim faith, and you may know him as Barack Hussein Obama. That's right. Hillary Clinton was mentored by Saul Alinsky personally, and then Barack Obama was radicalized in college and became a community organizer and paid by the Saul Alinsky Foundation and the Gamaliel Foundation, and they paid him to be a part of the south side of Chicago. And it's interesting stuff. So the power of Saul Alinsky and his method. His one of his idols he looked up to was Mahatma Gandhi. And if you know, Gandhi died in 1948. Okay? But what he was a part of was leading India from the rule of the British and its independence from being a British colony and becoming its own nation again. And so before leading the Indian National Congress, Gandhi studied law at the University and traveled to South Africa. And long and short, he influenced Alinsky. Alinsky influenced Clinton, and Clinton influenced Obama. Interesting stuff, is it not? Well, this is the Patriot Pastor Macil Duncan. We got some breaking news, and I'll just play some of these clips for you at this time.
Columbia University is canceling its university-wide commencement following pro-Palestinian protests on campus. The school's leadership said it would still hold its smaller school-based ceremonies this week and next. The decision comes after weeks of demonstrations disrupted campus life. Students had set up encampments on campus, which were cleared by police last week. The protests erupted over Israel's war in Gaza. The school cited ongoing security concerns as one of the main reasons for canceling the larger ceremony, which had been set for May 15th. University officials said students preferred smaller, more intimate ceremonies where they could be honored individually alongside their peers. Graduation ceremonies for several schools within the university will now take place at different times and locations throughout the coming weeks, with any events originally said for outdoors to be moved inside. The decision at Columbia follows a similar move by the University of Southern California. USC canceled its main commencement as well over reported security concerns. Kara Rucker, Straight Arrow News.
So that's what's going on. They're canceling these graduations. This is Mayor Adams. See what you think.
Radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done.
Eric Adams, who's obviously the mayor of New York City, was asked about the various groups that have been showing up to Columbia, because we just have no numbers on how many of these people are students in the first place.
I saw similar indicators from the Black Lives Matters March when it was brought to my attention that there were those who came to the city to disrupt our city, and she was able, through her team, was able to conduct an investigation, and what I feared was actually materialized and actualized by those who were on the ground. And I know that there are those who are attempting to say, well, the majority of people may have been students. You don't have to be the majority to influence and co-op an operation. That is what this is about. And so if we want to play the word police, you could do so. I want to play the New York City police, where we're going to protect our city from those who are attempting to do what is happening globally. There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children. And I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York. So the men and women of the New York City Police Department, you should be proud of yourself.
Dad, I'm no fan of Eric Adams, and he made New York City a sanctuary city, so he ushered in much of this madness. He's been terrible on crime and a bunch of other stuff, but he did basically get that right. The question is, well, what are you going to do? You can say that, all right, the encampment's gone for now, but are you never going to allow it to happen again? How are you going to de-radicalize Columbia University and the rest of the institutions?
Yeah, along those lines, I can't remember if it was in New York. Do you remember a day or two ago, I think there were some cops who were putting down the Palestinian flag and raising the American flag, and that caused a lot of people to feel a lot of positive emotions. Well, I actually took it the exact opposite way. The fact that we are today in a zeitgeist where raising the American flag on Americans, I mean, this is not Iwo Jima, right? This is not World War II, right? So the fact that people are celebrating that we are taking down the Palestinian flag speaks quite clearly to how weak and castrated Western leaders are. So notwithstanding what Eric Adams said here, which is a good thing, there needs to be that kind of reaction persistently over the long run if we are to autocorrect. Otherwise, I guarantee you it will be a slow demise into the abyss of infinite lunacy.
That was the Rubin report, and that was very interesting, in my opinion, that Mayor Adams is taking these stands. He did, like
There
they
is
said,
a movement to radicalize.
like they said, he brought sanctuary city status to them. He wanted the illegals at one time, but then when they gave too many to him, his city got overrun. People are exiting, and that's the thing I think that's shocking a lot of folks across the country is how many folks are actually leaving the state. And I've got an article here that just shows a lot of people are saying, hey, I don't think I want to be a part of this anymore. Here it is. The Blaze Media, Americans are fleeing blue cities and their suburbs. New York is one of the top people leaving the state. And this is all a result of the catastrophic mismanagement and arrogance of urban governments in one-party Democratic-controlled cities. People have been leaving many American major cities for years as high taxes and failure to deliberate or refusal to maintain law and order have generated a downward spiral of living conditions. Now suburbanites are increasingly deserting high-taxed, high-disorder urban areas as well. Major metropolitan areas, over 100 million population, lost 2 million net domestic migrants to other parts of the nation in just 3 years. Okay? So this is very interesting as you go to the Blaze Media if you want to go read up on it. But it talks about the New York here real quick. The exodus is not just a matter of Americans in big cities moving to nearby suburbs. Suburban counties in the New York City metro area lost more than 200,000 people between 2020 and 2023. Cities around Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Miami also are having population changes because people don't want to be on the outskirts of these blue cities. I'm sure it's affecting crime, because when you are soft on crime, like we've seen in many of these big cities, that means the suburbs surrounding the cities are probably held hostage to gang activities or those that are nefarious, and say, hey, even though sheriffs and maybe smaller towns may be a little tougher, there's only so much they can do if the crime continues. So you're seeing folks saying, skippity-doo-dah, I'll see you later. Now, I think it's going to be something for us to look at, and I don't know, if you're like me, I'm going, how long will it take for the country to wise up and say, I don't think I want to be a part of this. But let's see. I thought there was one here on Chicago, Illinois, is having a decrease as well. And I thought this was interesting because Illinois, the state has been pretty much a red state outside, but the cities are so blue, they carry the whole state in elections, and people are getting tired of that. So they're finding ways to exit. In Illinois, we've got actually some new people at our church that that fled from the Illinois area because of that, and it's rather sad. Well, thought I had that one out for you, but I don't. Sorry, it's went by. But anyway, let's scoot back to another topic. It's kind of on a good note. There is Unsung Hero. Go see this movie if you get a chance. It's a beautiful story of a wonderful and famous Christian music family. I just saw this today. This past weekend, I had the pleasure of watching Unsung Hero, the guy that wrote the article said, a film that may not initially grab the attention of the mainstream audience, but it's unequivocally a hidden gem. Unsung Hero is a far from the woke Hollywood narratives. Instead, it offers a refreshing focus on traditional values, emphasizing the power of faith, prayer, and family, unity during hardships. The film has a 63% rating from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but an impressive 99% audience score. And that means because the liberals don't like it, but folks that go and see it, 99% have given it thumbs up. So at the heart of the story is the Smallbone matriarch, Helen Smallbone, and she's portrayed by Daisy Betts, whose unwavering faith serves as a guiding light for her husband, David Smallbone, played by real son Joel Smallbone, and their 7 children. Okay, so if you want to go check it out, there's pictures and everything about the family. And anyway, it was a musical family back in the day, and the title of the movie, Unsung Hero. You might check it out if you're looking for a refreshing opportunity to go and maybe have a date night or take your family out for a movie. I'd check it out first before I took any kids to any movie, but it'd be something neat for you to consider. I've got a book out, Move Your Mountains, Learn the Journey of Faith That Can Overcome. And if you would like to get my book, you can order online at Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million, anywhere you get your online booking information. Move Your Mountains, Learn the Journey of Faith That Can Overcome. Please give me a good review if you would. I appreciate that. And keep that in your heart and minds if you're looking for literature, especially going to the beach this summer. Everyone needs a good book to read. Move Your Mountains by Macil Duncan. Think and pray about that. Well, I brought this up the other day, and I thought this was interesting, that the Ukraine has a new AI-generated foreign ministry spokesperson. And this lady now, and of course this is a robot, if you will, on Wednesday of last week, the Ukraine unveiled a new AI-generated foreign ministry spokeswoman who will now make official statements on behalf of the Ukraine Foreign Ministry. Is that not interesting? So the AI-generated spokeswoman's name is Victoria Shi, S-H-I, and the AI bot is modeled after Ukrainian singer Rosalie Nombre. Now, I don't know if you look, she kind of looks like AOC to me. But anyway, you can go take a look, and if you're going to go to YouTube, you can hear some of the statements, I guess, and the speech. But this is what the AI-generated digital representative said. My name symbolizes our main goal, the victory of Ukraine. And my last name, the artificial intelligence that created me. My work will consist of reporting operational and verified information on the console department of the MFA of Ukraine to the public. Okay, so is this of more to come? Will we start having AI, robotic representatives in cabinet positions? Could you see yourself one day voting between a human or a robot to represent you in Congress? As much as you might laugh right now, it's getting to a point. Japan is putting out some very sophisticated AIs and robots that are very much, they look very human, and some say if it wasn't for the blinking, they have a blinking thing on the temple. If it wasn't for that, some people say they're very, very lifelike, and the voices are very strong. So that's something for you to keep in mind. I also mentioned Friday, if you didn't hear, another Biden humiliation. The Russian troops just took one of our bases. Just like he gave up Afghanistan, and the Chinese now occupy the air base that was a state-of-the-art airport and everything. The Chinese own that, or now occupy it. Now in Niger, in Africa, the country that kicked Biden administration out and all of U.S. forces and said we were being stupid because we brought in things that went against their culture and their way of belief. So Joe Biden, thanks to him and his crazies that he sent down there, they kicked America out of their country, and Russia has now taken over the military base there. So we've surrendered 2 military bases under Joe Biden's watch, one to China and one now to Russia. Something to pray about if you think about it. This country is in need of prayer. The NIH leader exposed for recruiting faith leaders to push dangerous COVID shots to followers. More stuff is coming out on this. But the former leader of the National Institute of Health is being exposed for weaponizing faith and prayer to push so-called vaccine. We are uncovering a new video by Dr. Francis Collins openly pushing the vaccine as answers to God's prayer and using faith leaders that were paid to help push the vaccine on the people as a quote-unquote part of God's plan. So this should be interesting as we move towards the future there. But I think a lot of folks are starting to pay attention that there's a lot of questions that are just now being answered about the shot. So AstraZeneca finally admits in court and court documents its COVID-19 vaccine can cause health problems and has side effects. So AstraZeneca is now on the document, if you will, in court documents, that their COVID-19 shots did cause problems and can cause health defects, and people are catching that. So this is interesting. But do you remember back when you couldn't say anything about it? If you said anything negative about the COVID-19 shots, you like Facebook would put you in jail. Or if you mentioned ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, they were like cuss words in Facebook land. Well, a new article just dropped today saying that the latest government report reveals 10 times the Biden regime pressured Facebook to take down what ended up being truthful information on COVID and the vaccines. And the Gateway Pundit was one of its primary targets. On Wednesday, the House Judiciary Committee released an 800-page report on the Biden White House and their censorship regime. The report included numerous times the Biden regime threatened social media companies to censor, silence, and take information of the COVID origins and the vaccines. So this kind of partners with the criticism that Elon Musk had when he first took over Twitter, that the government was trying to heavy hand the social media companies, even though they were supposed to be privately owned. Facebook and Instagram, known as Meta, Zuckerberg owned, and then you had Twitter, Jack Dorsey owned that. And those were the two big social media. Everyone went with those. And then you had Trump came up with Truth Social, and you had some others. And then Telegram, the guy that was raised in Russia. And, of course, TikTok from China. So as you're starting to see all these different social media platforms come together, the Telegram owner also went on the record with Gateway Pundit 3 weeks ago now, and said that the FBI and federal agencies had tried to heavy-hand him for backdoor access and wanted to be able to censor or recreate the algorithms. So the government has had its hand in social media and trying to create and even deviate from the actual truth of stories. I'm not surprised, and I don't think any of you are truly surprised. It's just that now it's no longer speculative, it's now fact-checked. That's the difference right now. When you're starting to get fact-checked and you can say this is a definite, that's when you say, okay, when will Congress or someone do something? And don't hold your breath, because, deals are made behind the scenes. So anyway, backlash is growing against Biden's plan to import tens and thousands of Palestinian refugees. I don't know if you heard about this, but Biden thought it'd be a great idea if they imported, lots of refugees to the country. And see what you think of this update from, I think this is Kayleigh McMahony from Fox News.
So immigration has become a top political issue in the country.
I said, no, what?
I doubt that's so, because Americans are sitting saying, oh, we need more Palestinian refugees. Became a top issue because of the lawless southern border. And you're telling me President Biden's going to take executive action, not to close the southern border, but to bring in more Palestinian refugees. Wow. Good luck with that in a general election.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again. And I'll do dumb things again. And I'll do dumb things again. Dumb things. And I've done some 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 dumb things. And I'll do dumb things again.
But to bring in more Palestinian refugees.
So you got to ask yourself, what is Biden thinking? Well, I think the real question is, people controlling Biden, what are they thinking? Now, it's pretty obvious that they've got a desire to keep the border wide open, and through open border, they've created a 13 to 20 million. It's hard to count what they call the gotaways. Okay, through the best accurate, they said there's 12 to 13 million easy that have come across the border under Biden. But they said there's a lot of what they call gotaways that came in the middle of the night when no one could see. Not to mention, we've got those documents that were dropped a month ago where Biden has been flying people into major cities to avoid the southern border catastrophe. So hundreds have been flown in, bypassing the border, and they're being flown to blue cities around the country. Why does that matter? We've talked about this, that there's a government census going on. And when the government census is taken, it doesn't just take a census of actual citizens. It takes a census of folks that are receiving federal funding. Savvy? So when they get government phones, we give them free lodging, we give them free food, we give them free Scooby-Doo, what have you. Whatever we give them that's free, that's all part of the plan to document them numerically. Not personally, because if we start documenting them too closely, we just might prove a point that everyone can be documented, which they technically are. But they like to pretend that because if they ever admitted how much technology they have, we could vote in a matter of a day, and they would know who the winner is. They personally, in my opinion, have the ability. One vote per person across America, American citizens only. There's a way to do it. I guarantee you, if they can do these smartphones the way they're doing now, and the crazy creative and the think of all the security options. I mean, these things want you to have thumb or facial recognition just to open up your freaking phone. Now, if they could do that, why can't they do that for voting? You wouldn't even need voting precincts. If that happened, then the manipulation would be taken away. Because, see, when you do the early voting and you have people that have oversight of the voting machines, it's been proven they can hack the machines. See, the machines are not supposed to have internet access. But I challenge you to do this. Have you ever gone to your phone and to see what internet access is available? You know, when you go into McDonald's or Wendy's or IHOP or wherever you go to eat. It'll have guests or have, options for you to check and go to free Wi-Fi internet. Next time you go vote, check on outside the building. It usually has maybe one, like the fire hall I go to, has one, and it might have a house nearby. It's got a weak signal. But go inside the building, once you're inside the building, and look again. Sometimes up to 6 or 7 internet connections inside the building are very bold because, see, it's hard for them to hide that because they need to be able to Bluetooth this stuff so they can monitor the machines. They don't have the resources to go in and hardwire the machines because then we would see the wires. Savvy? That's not good. Well, if you hardwire in the buildings, that's a lot. Then you'd have to explain to the fire department or the church or wherever you're having your meeting, why did we have to come in and reorganize your electrical system? So what they have to Bluetooth. Well, when they Bluetooth, that's very obvious because if you have a smartphone, I challenge you, check that out. Miss New Jersey, who was on my show a couple years ago, I need to have her come back. She's a friend of Donald Trump, and her name escapes me, but she won Miss New Jersey back in the mid-'90s. But she's a very strong Christian woman. Matter of fact, she deleted her Facebook account because she was so put out in the 2020 election. But she said she was part of a Project Veritas undercover, where they would go to these different precincts and they would screenshot, take pictures of their phone outside the precinct, and then once they stepped in, they would screenshot again and show all these internet connections. Again, it's a law. It's against the law for voting machines to be connected to the internet. Savvy? They're not supposed to be able to do that. But interesting stuff. Okay, let's move on. Got some good stuff for you. One thing personally, I'm not a big fan of Bill Maher, but I got to tell you, he's really shocked me how strong he's come out, kind of in favor of what's going on in this country. And this is what he had to say about the college campuses and about these kids protesting, if you will. And it's rather humorous. He's laughing at their expense, but see what you think. This is Bill Maher, the HBO, very progressive liberal gentleman, sounding kind of like a Trump apologist. Hang on just a second.
I'm not saying there aren't sincere passions about Gaza, especially among people from the region, but social justice warriors, for a lot of them it seems like it's more about the...
They could unplug the country and then mass chaos, like true.
The warrioring than about whatever the cause is. Are you really speaking truth to power, or do you just think you look cool in a keffiyeh? Which is really just the new Che Guevara t-shirt. Another historical figure you never researched and so think is a hero, but was actually a sadistic, racist monster fighting for communism, the worst form of government ever. But these are small matters. Small matters when activism merges with narcissism. Less about the cause and more about me. Look at me. Watch me. And if you like the way I'm fighting injustice, remember to like and subscribe. Maybe from now on, before anyone commits an act of civil disobedience, they should ask themselves a few questions, like, is the most important thing in my life something I hadn't heard of 6 months ago? Do I even know what the I'm talking about? Am I really here for the cause, or is the cause here to bring you me? Why do I care so much about this particular cause? North Korea starves its people. China puts them in concentration camps. Myanmar brutalizes the Rohingya. Boko Haram kidnaps whole villages of women. Nothing? Ukraine? Maybe if these Google employees had the slightest idea what kind of fundamentalist, oppressive they're supporting, Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they might take it a little easier on the world's greatest monster, Genocide Joe. Genocide, by the way, is when you want to wipe out an entire people. That's the stated goal of Hamas. That's what from the river to the sea means. Hamas would do that to Israel, but can't. Israel could do that to them, but doesn't.
That's the bottom line. If you caught that last thing, you know, Hamas, if they could do it to Israel, would. He goes, Israel could do this to Hamas and hasn't. So you gotta. This is pretty interesting that Bill Maher has this kind of take, and Bill Maher is, again, he's a progressive. He's very left, and this is what he said about Trump. He thinks Trump is going to win the election primarily because of the way that the Biden campaign is handling things. Again, this is a very far left progressive Bill Maher.
It's sad. The whole thing is over now. There's not even a race to follow. But that was always fun. And Trump is beating Biden, you know, now in the national polls pretty strongly. And all my Democratic friends are saying, relax, it's a long time before the election. Because, yeah, that's what Biden's whole card is, time. No, that's it. We got to get used to it. This is it. This is the race. Biden and Trump, the race is over. This is bad news for the country, I think. Very good news for people who build ramps on debate stages. No, I know he's going to be, you know, it's sad. The whole thing is over now. There's not even a race to follow, but that was always fun.
So that's Bill Maher saying that he thinks it's over. And the most recent poll I just saw today, Trump's up 12% in several polls. That could be very, very damning. If the election were held today, I think it's a no-brainer. But don't count out. I mean, they've still got some time to whip up a good old challenge or some kind of a crazy event. But there's a lot of people still not happy with the way things have been run, and rightfully so. I mean, because, you know, if I was a Christian, you know, well, I am a Christian, but if I was around Christian people that were doubting, you know, something at my church, you know, you can go and deal with that. But when you're in politics, you really can't, because you have to deal with representatives that deal with representatives, you know, and it goes up a ladder. So sometimes it's kind of like the gossip game. If you ever played it, you whisper in someone's ear, and by the time it goes around at the end, they stand up and say what has been whispered about 10 times. It's totally different from what the message was. Well, you and I vote or to send a representative to the state legislator, and the state legislator communicates with the congressional person and people in D.C. By the time it gets up there and then we hear something back, it's totally opposite of maybe what we want. But that's the thing, and I think that's what Bill Maher's saying, that the way the election's going, it's almost over, and it's not done yet. Now, I've played this before, but I want you to hear these liberals. I play for you what Bill Maher said. This is Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, and he's pretty open that he thinks that the Democrats have blown it.
To my liberal friends out there, all you're doing is showing that you're scared you can't beat them on the issues and the merits. That's why he keeps saying it's a political campaign against me. That's why he keeps saying they can't beat me at the election, at the polls. This is the only way they could do it. And if you don't put him in jail, and he still goes from being the presumptive GOP nominee to the official GOP nominee, and he goes to the polls, even though he was going to whine about winning and being rigged again, you have given more fodder to that argument, which means we'll never have peace in this country, because tens of millions of people see what extent the other side is willing to go through just to keep him out of office, because they can't beat him on their own merits. And they're going to say, hey, you trumped this up against him again, and we'll have no peace.
And I think he's right. I think Stephen A. Smith is right. And a lot of folks, the polls have continued. They just took another poll this morning. Fox News reported that if indicted, only 4% said that they would maybe not vote for him. Before it was up to 27%. So Trump's gained 23% on that one issue. So even if they indict him and put him in prison while he goes through appeal process, he's going through the roof, his fundraising and his popularity. See, why don't they just back off? Well, I guess now they're too far into it. They would have to admit maybe some wrongdoing or etc. And I guess that doesn't sit well with them, because they want to make, sure, hey, we get something out of this that brings a little bit of cred back to us. But I just don't see that happening. That's just me. But I want you to think about something with me. And with all these kids put up a flag and at one of these campuses that's from another country, Elon Musk has a hilarious new law that he proposed. He did a survey on X, but this is his new law that he's proposing. And I think it's a rather good law. See what you think. This is Elon Musk dealing with those that don't like our country and want to take down our flag and put one up from another nation.
One of the guys who has been on the forefront of the fight for free speech and on the right side of pretty much everything over the last couple of years, Elon Musk, He put this up and related to what's going on college campuses. I love it. Proposed law: if someone tears down the American flag and puts up another flag in its place, that person should get a free but mandatory one-way trip to that flag's country. I am 100% on board that. Let's send some of these little queers for Palestine over to Gaza, and they will quickly find out that Palestine for queers ain't the same thing.
Now, that's the Rubin report, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But can you believe that Elon Musk has got a point? You put it up, it's mandatory. You get video evidence. You catch someone putting up a flag, say to Afghanistan, China, or Shabam Bam land. Okay, you've said where you want to go. We will pay for a one-way ticket and take you to Afghan, China, or Shabam Bam land, and see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. Now, if they want to come back to the country, I guess they pay their own way back. But it's going to be interesting. The more this kind of sentiment, and to hear Mayor Adams, I told you what Mayor Adams said, and I'll play the clip later in the last hour. He's pretty adamant that we only have one flag, and we don't need to be flying these other country flags where our flag is supposed to fly. And I think that's a pretty interesting thing. The NFL owners just voted last week that there's only one national anthem, and the only one that'll be played is the original long-term national anthem. Way to go, NFL. Pastor, salute to you guys. That other stuff needs to go away. Patriotism, I believe, is coming back on the rise, because I think nationalism, make America great again, is what's on the line here. You've got globalism versus nationalism. I've explained this before. And if Donald Trump is made president, then the majority of the people have said we want to make America great again. We want nationalism. We want America's interest to be taken into account first. Whereas when you have a globalist, Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama, was a globalist. We know now the Clintons were globalists. The Bushes were globalists. We had a slew of globalists in a row there. As a matter of fact, Bush Sr. called the term New World Order. And a lot of folks, when they started doing research, the Rockefeller Lockstep 2010, again, Rockefeller Lockstep 2010, that's a little scary when you go and look at that. And then Agenda 2030, that's at the UN. Again, globalism. Then you have the World Health Economic Forum and the World Health Organization. Well, the World Health Organization is trying to get an agreement, and over 180 countries have got on board that the next climate issue, be it a COVID-19, whatever, that the World Health Organization can make laws or make statements that would supersede and override national laws, meaning that they can create a law that Americans would have to follow, even if it violated your constitutional rights. Well, in respect to that, LSU and several other states have come up with laws within their state statutes saying that they will not comply and they will not go along with any kind of global law that tries to supersede the Constitution or the Bill of Rights here in America. Interesting stuff, is it not? Don't forget Davos. That's where Klaus Schwab created the World Economic Forum, and he said you'll own nothing and be happy. They have a plan for a global governance, and it's just will we comply to that? And the little things are happening that I think have a lot of folks confused and concerned because that law that I mentioned earlier that they passed, and here again is the blogger that talks about this this H.R. 690 that the Congress just passed makes parts of the Bible to be preached out loud illegal.
Has a definition and like 11 different examples of what would qualify as anti-S. The ones Christians should be against and very concerned about is the fact that they say claims of Jews killing Jesus is anti-S. And many Christians are actually supporting this, saying that the Romans were the ones that killed Jesus, not the Jews. Well, in Acts 2, addressing Israel, the men of Israel, the Jews, it says, "You yourselves know this Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed." You Jews, this is the Jews, you crucified and killed. The Romans were just the tools the Jews used, but it was the Jews that killed him.
So that's interesting stuff. So that H.R. 690 has a lot of people concerned, and rightfully so, because if you can't preach the Bible or teach the Bible as we know it to be, that's going to create a lot of confusion and frustration among a lot of the Christian community. So it's something to keep in mind as we're looking at that. Well, Hamas doesn't want to go deal with Israel or meet halfway. And here's the latest from CBN News. See what you think.
If Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone. Those were the words from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Today, as Israel paused to remember the 6 million lost in the Holocaust, it's once again in a fight for survival. Chris Mitchell reports on the latest developments in the ongoing war against Hamas.
Hamas announced the latest ceasefire talks have ended. The terror group insists on two key demands. One, the end of the war, and two, Israel completely pulls out of the Gaza Strip. Both are non-starters for Israel. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant addressed troops about the talks.
We're recognizing worrisome signals that Hamas is not planning to accept any deal or agreement with us. And that means the operation in Rafah and in the entire Gaza Strip in the very near future.
As a prelude to the incursion into Rafah, the IDF is sending leaflets telling civilians to leave for a humanitarian zone Israel is preparing for their safety. On Sunday, Hamas launched a rocket attack on Israeli soldiers at the Kerem Shalom crossing for humanitarian aid. The attack killed 4 soldiers and wounded 9. Despite the continued attacks by the terror group, the Biden administration objects to any incursion into the last major Hamas stronghold. And Axios is reporting that the U.S. stopped a shipment of ammunition. Israel also closed the Qatar-based Al Jazeera News Bureau, calling it a Hamas mouthpiece that undermines the nation's security. At the annual commemoration for the Holocaust Sunday night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu compared Israel's current struggle to the Holocaust.
Today, we again confront enemies bent on our destruction. I say to the leaders of the world, no amount of pressure, no decision by any international forum will stop Israel from defending itself.
Israel stands at a defining moment in its history, and Netanyahu pledged, if necessary, the Jewish state will stand alone.
Well, that's pretty sobering. And there's going to be a time in the near future that Israel said they're going to be crossing in and taking back the land because Hamas, is not coming to terms. And so when that happens, be ready, my friend. It's going to spill over to all of us. And right now you're seeing what's happening on the campus, but this is comes across to many as nothing but mental games. As you're starting to hear of more clashes on the campuses, but we're finding out in some instances where up to 60%, according to NBC News, let me make sure I've got that right. Yeah, NBC News says New York officials said a significant number of those arrested this week at the campus demonstrations were not affiliated with the schools. Some are saying as high as 60% of those arrested are not students. So this is I think the thing that bothers some people is that you're allowed to have these people that are influencing the children and radicalizing them to beliefs that hate their country, tend to turn on their values and their families, And that's not why you send a kid to college. That's just not why you send a kid to college. You want your kid to grow and learn things, but in a way that's healthy and admired. And so that's just something. There is a let's see. Yep, covered that. There were some bodies found in Mexico. There's some breaking news on that.
3 bodies found in Mexico have been identified as those of a missing American tourist and 2 Australian brothers. The FBI confirmed the 3 bodies were found on Friday in a well in the Mexican state of Baja California, about an hour and a half south of the U.S.-Mexico border. Mexican authorities released more information Sunday night, saying the families of American Jack Carter Road and Australians Calum and Jake Robinson were able to identify their loved ones. The 3 friends were on a surfing trip when they disappeared last week. Mexican officials said all 3 were found with a gunshot wound to the head after an alleged carjacking incident. Authorities say 3 suspects have been arrested. A 4th body was also located with the 3 others, but officials say the yet-to-be-identified victim is not related to this case. The U.S. State Department says it's closely monitoring the situation. The department currently has a travel advisory for the Baja California region, advising tourists to reconsider travel due to crime and kidnapping.
It's Lieutenant Governor, former Marine Winsome Sears, kind enough to join us. Governor, always good having you. Now, of course, you've had these dust-ups over at Virginia Tech. Nothing, that got out of control, but, you did see more than 2,000 folks arrested. So it's spread everywhere. What do you think of this, how bad this gets or how widespread this gets?
Well, we're not doing crazy in Virginia. That's why we were elected. The people understood that you have to have moral law and order, and people need to be safe in their neighborhoods, and that's why you're seeing that. Governor Youngkin has really cracked down and said, you're not putting down the first tent peg. You can, of course, peaceably assemble. You can exercise your First Amendment rights. But we are going to ensure that Jewish students are safe, that their parents know that they're safe. And the minute that you decide that you're going to turn a supposedly peaceful protest into violence, well then no, you've got to go. And by the way, we're seeing professionals who have come into Virginia, and that's why they have been arrested. Today we have for our VCU folks who both the students and the professionals who came, they're going to be arraigned today, as well as those at Tech. And we're just not having it. People need to know that their safety. No, we're not having it.
Governor, the reason why I ask is a number of schools have tried to negotiate with these protesters at Northwestern, at Brown, at Rutgers, various methods where they say, all right, we'll put up a measure to put up for a vote. Whether we divest in Israeli companies. That's a popular one, and that's what Brown and Rutgers are doing. Northwest is doing a couple of other things, but basically it's that approach. What do you think of that?
Well, what I think is these college, university professors and the leaders and presidents, they need to get a hold and get a grip of what's going on their campuses. What you are seeing is a takeover. No, you're not in charge. If you're the president, you're supposed to be in charge. You're supposed to take authority and keep everyone safe. You don't negotiate with people who are destroying your buildings. You don't negotiate with people who you see them showing up with helmets. They're showing up with gas masks. We have seen here in Virginia where you have pickup trucks dropping off rocks and sticks, bear sprays, and all of that. Police were assaulted. Have we not learned anything? So we need not weak leaders, we need leaders who understand your first job is to make sure campus is safe for everyone.
And that's Winsome Sears. She's the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. And spot on, way to go, Idaho. I think we all would agree with what she's saying, and that's why she said they don't sponsor that crazy mentality of negotiating with, if you want to call it terrorists or people that are definitely being funding this from the outside. And we've talked about that, and that's something that some of the groups are very upset about. And a lot of American universities right now, the Federalist says American universities are on a death spiral, and we should help them along. And it goes on to say in March 9, 2023, the Stanford Law School chapter of the Federalist Society invited Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Kyle Duncan to give a talk on campus, and Duncan's conservative and pro-life views aroused the ire of a mob of student demonstrators who showed up to disrupt the event, with signs bearing messages including Judge Duncan can't find the clit. Protesters repeatedly shouted down Duncan as he tried to give his speech, and one yelled at him, "We hope your daughters get raped." This is your radical left, my friends. Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion soon arrived on the scene. Instead of attempting to restore order, this guy gave a long, hectic lecture to Duncan, suggesting that his speech literally denies the humanity of people, and asking, is the justice worth the squeeze? So this is the interesting thing you're finding out on these American universities. There is a one way only. It's free speech is only for them. It's not for us. And if you don't agree with them, they shout you down, they blow whistles, they pitch fits, and then they take that as victory, that they've shut you down to where you give up. And that's where we've got to say, I'm not going to do that. You're going to eventually get a little tired of blowing that whistle, pal. And I'm going to tell you what I think. But that's where we're at in this country. So maybe that's the attitude we should have. Let them go bankrupt and let them fall. But some of Biden's biggest backers are funding anti-Israel protests and rocking universities. Okay? Some of the President Joe Biden's most prominent backers are funding pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas demonstrators who are protesting U.S. support of Israel. Activist groups such as Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now, When, are in part funded through nonprofit networks involving leftist mega donors such as George Soros, Bill and Melinda Gates, David Rockefeller Jr., and the Pritzker family, according to Politico. So the Jewish Voice of Peace, responsible for organizing protests at the universities such as Columbia, are both supported by the Tides Foundation, which is funded by George Soros and Gates. Tides also receives money from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, directed by the board, and includes David Rockefeller Jr., Nick Pritzker, a wealthy entrepreneur and heir of the Hyatt Hotel empire, and his wife Susan also donates to Tides. And so with this going on, you're seeing a growing number of people that back Biden, but they're backing Palestine. So the financial checkbooks that are keeping Biden in the race are anti-Jew. They're very Semitic. So you've got to ask yourself, why are they so anti-Jewish? Why do they? And it just, to me, doesn't make sense. But I guess it's a matter of control and power for the region. So the Georgian mass protests, USAID and George Soros are pulling the strings of the color revolution. Okay, this is another article. This one happens to be in the Gateway Pundit. The ongoing season of protest in Georgia shows us once again the working of the color revolution in motion, where the U.S. intel community and globalist NGOs join efforts to topple unfriendly regimes, or at least strong-arm them into compliance with the planetary globalist agenda. So that's interesting. So you can check that out on the Gateway Pundit. So we have a problem with that, and I think that's something no one is denying, that there seems to be a problem with that. And it's something for us to consider and pray about, because when you start thinking about these campuses and your kids, it gets scary for parents. Is my child safe? Is what's going on there something I can live with? As we're going into the break here, this is the mayor of New York. I'm going to let you listen to Mayor Adams. He makes a lot of sense to me. I'll see what you think.
There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done.
Eric Adams, who's obviously the mayor of New York City, was asked about the various groups that have been showing up to Columbia, because we just have no numbers on how many of these people are students in the first place.
I saw similar indicators from the Black Lives Matters march when it was brought to my attention that there were those who came to the city to disrupt our city, and she was able, through her team, was able to conduct an investigation, and what I feared was actually materialized and actualized by those who were on the ground. And I know that there are those who are attempting to say, well, the majority of people may have been students. You don't have to be the majority to influence and co-op an operation. That is what this is about. And so if we want to play the word police, you could do so. I want to play the New York City police, where we're going to protect our city from those who are attempting to do what is happening globally. There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York. So the men and women of the New York City Police Department should be proud of yourself.
Gad, I'm no fan of Eric Adams, and he made New York City a sanctuary city, so he ushered in much of this madness. He's been terrible on crime and a bunch of other stuff, but he did basically get that right. The question is, well, what are you going to do? You can say that, all right, the encampment's gone for now, but are you never going to allow it to happen again? How are you going to de-radicalize Columbia University and the rest of the institutions?
Yeah, along those lines, I can't remember if it was in New York. Do you remember a day or two ago, I think there were some cops who were putting down the Palestinian flag and raising the American flag, and that caused a lot of people to feel a lot of positive emotions. Well, I actually took it the exact opposite way. The fact that we are today in a zeitgeist where raising the American flag on Americans, I mean, this is not Iwo Jima, right? This is not World War II, right? So the fact that people are celebrating that we are taking down the Palestinian flag speaks quite clearly to how weak and castrated Western leaders are. So notwithstanding what Eric Adams said here, which is a good thing, there needs to be that kind of reaction persistently over the long run if we are to autocorrect. Otherwise, I guarantee you it will be a slow demise into the abyss of infinite lunacy.
I've got to agree. But I think to see a Democratic mayor come out that strong, and to me comes across very patriotic, especially going against the norm of the Democrats, because you've got so many of them that are so progressive. They support anything disruptive against the flag, against our country, and he's, of course, he's in a city that's in decline. It's being overrun, and he's probably concerned. Donald Trump walks through the streets and they're chanting USA, USA to him, and that's just something he can't deny. So just interesting stuff there as we pray about that. Russia is planning tactical nuclear drills after a threat. See what you think about this.
Vladimir Putin begins his fifth six-year term as Russian president Tuesday, following more than 24 years at the helm. As he steers Russia deeper into the prolonged conflict with Ukraine, the Russian Defense Ministry announced Monday that tactical nuclear weapon drills are planned for the near future. These exercises are designed to get Russia's non-strategic nuclear forces ready for combat missions. The Defense Ministry said the drills are in response to recent so-called provocative statements from Western officials, remarks Russia says require retaliatory measures. Last week, British Foreign Secretary David Cameron said Ukraine had a right to use weapons provided by London to strike targets inside Russia, and that it was up to Kyiv whether to do so.
Russia has launched an attack into Ukraine, and Ukraine absolutely has the right to strike back at Russia.
Including inside Russia?
Well, right, that's a decision for Ukraine, and Ukraine has that right. Just as Russia is striking inside Ukraine, you can quite understand why Ukraine feels the need to make sure it's defending itself, it's getting the Russians out of its country, and it has the ability to strike back.
In response, a Russian foreign ministry spokesperson said Cameron's remarks admit that the West is waging war against Russia using Ukrainian hands. The rise in tensions comes as French President Emmanuel Macron told The Economist that he would consider sending French troops to Ukraine if Russia were to break through the front lines.
So, interesting. Patriot Pastor, I'll be back after this.
Columbia University is canceling its university-wide commencement following pro-Palestinian protests on campus. The school's leadership said it would still hold its smaller school-based ceremonies this week and next. The decision comes after weeks of demonstrations disrupted campus life. Students had set up encampments on campus, which were cleared by police last week. The protests erupted over Israel's war in Gaza. The school cited ongoing security concerns as one of the main reasons for canceling the larger ceremony, which had been set for May 15th. University officials said students preferred smaller, more intimate ceremonies where they could be honored individually alongside their peers. Graduation ceremonies for several schools within the university will now take place at different times and locations throughout the coming weeks, with any events originally said for outdoors to be moved inside. The decision at Columbia follows a similar move by the University of Southern California. USC canceled its main commencement as well over reported security concerns. Kara Rucker, Straight Arrow News.
The oceans are heating up, and bleaching corals in what is now being called a global bleaching